Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm with eLearning Brothers. Today's session is going to be about the difference between instructional writing and writing for engagement. We've got the title there as Translating Instructional Design Speak into Engaging Course Content. Doesn't entirely talk about what we're talking about today, but either way, we hope that you guys find something useful in today's discussion. This session will be recorded, and we'll send a copy of it out to everyone who has registered for this session. We'll get that put together and emailed out later in the day. If you have questions during the webinar or if you'd like to participate, we will be asking several questions, and you can communicate with us through the questions panel in the GoToWebinar control screen. So please do use that as you need to. All right, so to talk to us today, we have Misty Harding, Senior Learning Consultant with us today. Thanks, Misty. We know you're very busy, but we appreciate the time you give to us here in our webinar. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Misty.
All right, thanks, Andrew. He always talks as fast as he can because he knows that my webinars are like jam-packed. I told him that I'm trying to reform, so I've tried to more appropriately size this webinar today so that it's achievable in less than like an 8-hour period. So this is a topic that I really wanted to do a webinar on. I was just telling Andrew before we hopped on that I talk about this a lot, and I feel like I personally have not done a good job of really defining what this is. And so I wanted to take the time to just focus on this one concept because I just feel like it's one of those invisible things that no one thinks about, but it really can make a big difference in how your learner feels about your course and how we're helping to keep them engaged as they move from instructional activity to instructional activity. And so today we're learning how to give more attention to some areas of your course that kind of fall through the cracks. And you might be interested to see how we've illustrated it. So let me start with this. Let's say that you've been invited to a party. This is your invitation that was put together by someone who's not a graphic designer who copied something from the internet, namely me. And so we've got, this comes in, our buddy Charlie's having it's his 40th birthday. And it's saying, hey, join us for apps, eats, and treats. Bring trunks for the pool, a gift for Charlie, and all your best stories to roast him with. See you on Saturday. So to me, I think that sounds like a pretty fun event. I might RSVP to Natalie if I don't have anything going on Saturday and go over there and have a good time with Charlie. This is an example of something I might want to do. But we're going to contrast it with this. Please get in your car and come to Charlie's 40th birthday party. First, you're going to find a place to park. Then, remove your shoes before entering the house. We'll wait for everyone to get there before we eat, which could result in some awkward standing around. But everyone will be able to eat approximately 2 shish kebabs each with a salad and a roll. There's going to be cake and ice cream for dessert. There isn't a formal program, so you're welcome to sit on whatever furniture you'd like, wherever you'd like, and talk to whomever you would like until approximately 6:30 p.m. when you will put your shoes back on and drive your car back home, provided you haven't consumed too much alcohol. If you are drunk, you should call a cab. So probably the same event, but a little bit of a different feeling. So my question to you is, why is it that one of these invitations makes you want to go to the party while the other one makes you want to stay home? Even though really it's the same party. And this is where you talk to Andrew, and then Andrew will tell me
right into the questions panel. Some people are probably going to want to write a dissertation on the difference here, so we'll have to take a little bit of okay, so yeah, early comments are coming in. Too much information, way too many instructions. One person says, yikes. Another person says, I didn't even read through, I wouldn't have read through all of this if Misty hadn't. Second one calls out everyone's awkwardness, and people never like that. One method is very prescriptive. The other assumes you're not stupid. Too much detail, fun versus here's the rules. It's all about control. Lots of rambling, no organization. That's a good one. Information overload. Let's see. Instructions for things that we already know are going to be a part of the party. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is one is understanding of what most people know, and the other is assuming nobody knows anything.
I love all of those. I think the one that's the most relevant to what we're talking about today was the one that said something that's fun versus here's all the rules. And really that comment in particular really gets at the heart of what we're talking about. because as instructional designers, the way in which we sell an experience really comes through how we invite people. Well, it's two things. There's a way that we set up and sell the experience that we're about to have. And certainly when, we're talking about, hey, they're swimming, and you kind of already have a picture in your mind of something that's fun from the first one. And the way that in which we invite other people to participate in that really strongly affects their level of interest. So I just put a few thoughts on the side here about how we want people to feel based upon the way that we invite them to participate. And I think if you take a look at that list, it's very different than how the second invitation makes you feel. Unfortunately, we have a lot of this that goes on in our courses, and to some extent I think that we're used to it, and so we kind of just take it without realizing that it really could be better. And why is that? Why do we have that going on in our courses? So I call this evil genius syndrome. And my theory is that inside every instructional designer there is a tiny evil genius just waiting to escape so that he can monologue. So if you guys aren't familiar with the concept of monologuing, I wanted to show a quick video. I think it's so funny that they call that out. You caught me monologuing. So I show this video to kind of drive the point home, because so often I think instructional designers, they just don't understand what I'm trying to say about what I call instructional design speak. And I'm like, it is your evil genius monologue. It is when you totally depart from the course and you start to say things like, on the next 4 slides, we are going to review several scenarios, which will teach you how to blah, blah, blah. First, you will read the scenario, then you will blah, blah. That's your instructional plan, dudes. That's not engaging writing. But it's just like, it's this evil genius syndrome. It's just like, I have worked so hard on this that I just want to tell you exactly what I have planned and all the work that went into it, and I'm going to lay it all out. And then in some cases, it's a little bit of just laziness, because we're almost talking out loud to ourselves. So we're kind of monologuing. So what does this sound like? We're going to get a little bit more specific. These are symptoms of evil genius syndrome and how to know when you might be monologuing. So if you're explaining exactly what you have planned, sometimes several slides in advance, and very literally, you might be monologuing. Clinically detailing every step of the experience that the learner needs to take until they fall asleep from boredom. Does this start to sound like our party invitation? The strong natural belief that the learner will naturally want to participate in an educational activity because it's good for their brain. I see this a lot where it's like, if I say to you, on the next few slides, you're going to be able to read some scenarios. Oh, great. I'm going to be able to read some scenarios. It's very much an eat your vegetables type of a thing, when really as instructional designers, especially in e-learning, I think our job is to take those vegetables and blend them up into some type of a fruit smoothie. I mean, we are parents who are trying to get kids to eat their vegetables. We really are. And so if we have to cut that sandwich into a Mickey Mouse smiley face, or that is part of what we need to be thinking about, because no one is excited by just, oh, here's, welcome to our course. In the first chapter, you're going to eat a ton of broccoli. And in the second chapter, no, nobody wants that. Never talking about what's in it for the learner. And really, if you can keep that in mind, and we're going to do some workshopping on this, if you can keep in mind to just always be talking about what's in it for them and what they're going to get out of it, or why they should care, or why it's cool, or why it's curious, or what they're going to be able to show or know, it really starts to flip the script. The other example is breaking the fourth wall to be Captain Obvious and tell everyone exactly what's going on. Kind of like our party invitation, but the reason that we do it is because we crafted it and we care a lot about it, and we just want to tell everybody how great our little plan is. So anyway, that's kind of the basis of what I call instructional design speak. So a lot of times when I review courses, I'll call that out for people and say, hey, we've got a lot of kind of instructional design speak going on here. We need to step back and we need to kind of recraft. But what I mean by that is, it's a writing style that seems to be pretty unique to instructional designers, where instead of creative writing or narrative writing or writing for engagement, we choose to just detail our evil instructional plans. to the learner because they're held captive and hostage, rather than using an engaging and conversational style that would draw them in to the experience that we're trying to craft. So here's some examples of what I'm talking about. And actually, I would love for you guys to post some examples in the chat. There's a lot of examples we could use. I picked out 8 different elements that are common to instructional or common to e-learning courses, and gave an example of what instructional design speak might look like. But if you can think of another one, I'd love to hear it in the comments. So I'll review a couple of these and then we'll go to the comments. One is signposting. So the concept of signposting is that as an instructional designer, you're leading people from one place to the next. You're helping them know, we're going to talk about 3 things, or we just talked about these 3 things, and here's how it relates to this, and that type of thing. So here's an example of instructional design speak. On the last slide, we learned about why we should respect ladder safety. On this slide, we'll review some ladder safety basics. If you think first of all, you've heard that. You hear that all the live long day. But if you really look at it, what are we doing? We're kind of narrating our instructional plan, aren't we? Are we talking about the learner? Not really. We're using the term you, but it's not really about them. Here's an example of a wrap-up page also on ladder safety. Thank you for completing this course on ladder safety. You should now be familiar with the safety protocols to maintain safety in the workplace. Click the X in the upper right corner to exit this course and receive credit in the LMS. It's clinical. It's like our version in our industry of being clinical. Even in the introduction to a course. Welcome to this course about basic health and safety in the workplace. Today you will learn the most common procedures you're required to perform in the workplace in order to keep the environment sanitary. Click the forward arrow to begin. Okay, fair enough, but do I care? Is that engaging? It's really not. And so you'll notice like this stuff, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, this stuff is everywhere. And I have a hard time sometimes helping people understand what I'm talking about because I'm not necessarily talking about what we're doing with the content of the course, which oftentimes comes from a stakeholder. Sometimes you can change it, sometimes you can't. But this is the stuff that we write. This is the stuff that we actually have a lot of control over. And I think that we lose sight of it. And if we were to pay a little bit more attention to it, it really could change the experience that the learner has. Another example is transitional narrative. You will now learn about the proper way to effectively wear PPE in the workplace. Select each item to learn more. Again, you're probably thinking, that doesn't sound super sinful. I say stuff like that every day. You do, and we do, and I do. But we're missing the opportunities to engage somebody. And we're gonna go through and talk exactly about how to flip this around. Instructions are a huge one, guys. Instructions are definitely where we go crazy. On the following 3 slides, you're going to be presented with 3 scenarios that show how communication can get in the way of good working relationships. Read each scenario, then answer the questions and read the feedback that is shown to you. Again, looking at it with a critical eye, you can see how clinical that is and that really all we're doing is outlining our instructional plan, and it is boring. I did put an example in here of how we can rewrite the client's content. So you're not going to hear a lot of it here. I mean, this is just an example of content, but we're going to move on and do some workshopping, and I'm going to show you how we can massage the stakeholders' content or the subject matter experts' content to be more engaging, to be clear, to be more brief, which I'm not an expert in being more brief. If you guys have been on any webinar with me, you know that's not the case. But more clear, more brief, and more engaging, but without changing the meaning. And I think that that's a value that we should be adding to any project that we do. The same thing is true for objectives and feedback. There's even ways to liven those up. And again, we have so much control over everything you're seeing here. We just need to take it. We need to take control. We need to silence our little mini inner genius who wants everybody to know our super cool instructional plan. And we need to come out and say, oh, this place in the course is not for me to do that. This place in the course is for me to try to engage the learner. Okay, so now that I've given you some examples, Andrew, are there other examples that are coming in the chat?
The resounding comment here is that some of these have been taught to people that they should be used. Some people are saying our training has every single one of these, and we're trying to recover it as we launch our new or redesign an old course. These are just everywhere. Maybe the problem is in the job title, instructional design, often translated as designing instructions. So maybe we need to change our job titles, like be an experienced designer or something like that.
Yeah, I love that comment. In fact, there are a lot of organizations that are making that shift and calling it a learning experience designer, because it's calling out, and I think you can take any job anywhere and talk about all the different hats that you have to wear. But for sure, this is one of ours. And we are, rightfully so, really good stewards of making sure that people are clear about what's happening. But in this particular case, our strength becomes a weakness because we infuse the course with a lot of these things and we miss the opportunity for them to be more engaging. So
There
thanks
is
for your,
another comment here that says, sometimes our subject matter experts insist on language like this. Is that, in your experience, Misty, is that a common thing?
in my experience, except for the content piece, our stakeholders don't usually take a lot of interest in these particular pieces because they don't relate specifically to the procedure or the content itself. And so we're left to decide if we say these things, how we say these things, where we say these things, which is why I describe it as a great opportunity, because even in instances where your content's super locked down and they won't let you touch it, you can usually do the rest of these. So if someone's having that experience, that's a little foreign to me. I mean, every now and again, you do end up with a stakeholder who's super prescriptive about literally everything you do, and yeah, that could happen.
So true. One other question here is, what about the design principle of advanced organizing, like a core design principle of information mapping and Ruth Clark's methodologies? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would need a little bit more information about what the question is. And in fact, I don't know that I'm familiar with that concept.
All right, great. So for that question, go ahead and you can send us an email or just chat with us online. We'll be happy to expand on
send me
that.
an email about it. I just need a little bit more information about how that applies here. Because and maybe perhaps as we go through the workshop, some of that'll be clear, because people right now are probably thinking, what am I supposed to say if I don't say this? And we're supposed to signpost, right? And we're supposed to do these things. Yeah, we are. But there's just a better way that we could do it. So let's take a look at it. We're going to actually go through each one of these as a group, and we're going to rewrite it. So let's start with the transitional narrative. So what I've done here is I've given a little bit of background context to help orient you, and then I've transferred in the instructional design speak. And then what we want to do as a group is we want to write an improved version. So we'll workshop that, and then I have one in here, but I'd love to hear what you guys, I would like us to take the time, and I have like 8 of these, to really illustrate how could we write this differently. So the context is, the previous slide introduced the concept of PPE, which is personal protective equipment, and showed some examples of what typical types of PPE are in the workplace. So that's hard hats, gloves, safety vests, that type of thing. So the slide we're on now is going to specifically focus on the proper way to wear it, the do's and don'ts of how to wear that equipment now that we've introduced it. So instructionally, that's what's happening. So instructionally, we came in and said, you will now learn about the proper way to effectively wear PPE in the workplace. Select each article of clothing to learn more. So we have little pieces of clothing out on the screen, and as they click them, they kind of get the do's and don'ts of how to wear it. But if we were going to improve that transitional narrative and make it more engaging, what might it look like? So I'd love to see some examples in the chat. And if we want to do this first one where I just show you the example, we can do that too.
We've got a lot of comments here. So one is show a worker and dress that worker with the correct protective gear that they are supposed to wear when they enter the workplace. Another one is revise to, do you know how to wear PPE in the workplace? Make it a question.
Yes, I really like that. That one works really well, because you're asking them a question about themselves, and we are not interested in anything more than we are interested in ourselves. So that type of methodology works really well.
Include a story to make it engaging. If you're wearing this wrong, here's what could happen. Something like that.
Yeah, starting with just
bad examples and good examples. Getting ready for work. What PPE should you wear? Things like that. So it looks like we're getting a lot of similar ideas. phrased a little bit differently. One person
Okay.
says, I like the idea of a dress-up doll.
Right. Well, and certainly there's probably more interactive ways to explore the do's and don'ts of PPE. But in this particular case, we're talking about like, how can we introduce what is happening on the slide in a way that's engaging? And I liked a lot of the ideas that you had to share. What did I put on here? So now you know the clothes that keep you safe, but the question is, do you know how to wear them? There's a right way and a wrong way to wear each piece of personal protective equipment. Explore each item to see if you're surprised by what you find. So in this particular example, this is an example of what someone shared, of just kind of asking them the question, what do you know, or would you know? Or the other thing in here too is that kind of that, explore each item to see if you're surprised by what you find. Oh, would I be surprised? Are there things that are surprising in here? So you're just doing a little bit to heighten the level of curiosity, or even when you directly ask them a question, now you know what keeps you safe, but do you know how to wear that stuff? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Do I? I don't know. So it's a very small change that just helps it feel more learner-centric and a little bit more interesting. So I hope that that's illustrative of what we're talking about. Here's another one with signposting. So the context here would be that the previous slide introduced the learner to the concept of respecting the dangers of ladders and just how common ladder safety accidents really are. The slide we're on now is going to introduce the specific and basic best practices of ladder safety. So how would you write some transitionary narration to begin the current slide? Here's what we have right now. On the last slide, we learned about why we should respect ladder safety. On this slide, we'll review some ladder safety basics. How would you improve it?
We'll give you guys a moment to type in some ideas. Ask the question, where could we safely store this ladder? Want to learn more about ladder safety basics? Let's review some ladder safety basics. Give examples of what happens when ladder safety is not respected. Remember the idea of safety? Let's see what it looks like when you are not safe. It's another fun one. Ask, what are some ladder safety basics? If you want to climb the corporate ladder, you have to use best safety practices. Let's take a look at best practices now. Bob has been given the responsibility for blank, which requires a ladder. Let's look at some of the risks he faces.
Oh, I like that.
I like that one too. How dangerous can ladders be? That's a good one too. It depends. Is it armed? No, I'm just kidding. So let's see. Show all of the lawsuit safety stickers that are on a ladder. Do that too. Yeah, so lots of different creative wordings for this one.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, here's what I had. Did it surprise you to learn how common ladder safety accidents are? Don't worry, you can stay safe with a few basics. Some of those were much more creative than what I had. But again, if you look at what we're looking at here, I'm still talking to them and I'm still talking about them rather than narrating my instructional plan. Okay, here's another one. Let's do a wrap-up page. So the user is done with the course, they've achieved the objectives, and they have passed the test. They're ready to exit and go back to the job. So what we have right now is, thank you for completing this course on ladder safety. You should now be familiar with the safety protocols to maintain safety in the workplace. Click the X in the upper right corner to exit this course and receive credit in the LMS. How could we do this a little bit differently? And I'll give you some hints on this one. Some things that help on wrap-up pages are call to action type language. So what did they get out of this and what should they do about it now? Because what we have here is really like, all right, you are done with my instructional plan and you should now be able to achieve the instructional objectives that I laid out for you because of the way that I put the content in this. Please make sure to close this window so that you get credit in my little system where I registered you in your course. It really is about us. So how can we make it about them?
All right, comments coming in. Share what you learned. Write in one person. You will help understand what you've learned. How can you use this information you've learned in this course? create a job aid for you to use later. Now that you know, well, comments came in and it bumped up where I was reading. Let's see. Now that you know about ladder safety, let's see if you can get to the top of the ladder to escape this course. Another one, celebrate them for completing it. Let's see, congratulations, you now know ladder safety protocols. Get out there and show your workplace how on top of ladder safety you are. Got a lot of punny people here. Okay, number one, don't say LMS. What's that? You can say that they can now close the course and they'll find the credit in their learner report. Yep, using language that matches their perspective.
Yeah, it's about them.
You've put in the time, now let's give you the credit. Click blank. Everyone here, have a ladder graphic tracking their progress and show them at the top. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
Great, you're prepared to maintain safety in the workplace. If you need additional resources, you can go to blank. You did it, great job. Don't you go dying on me.
You know what would be so fun is to be an instructional designer in a company that has kind of an irreverent tone, because it really would let you do a lot of really fun things with your writing. Okay, here's what I had. You've climbed the last official rung on this ladder, and now you know everything you need to know to stay safe on the job when using a ladder. That sounds redundant, so I'm reading it out loud. We care about your health and safety when you're here at work, so don't forget to call to action 1, call to action 2, call to action 3, whatever the 3 kind of main takeaways were, and then to end with, we know you will. So it's just kind of like a little pat on the back, and a don't forget, Smokey the Bear says to, you know, watch your wild. What does he say? Put out your fires? Oh gosh, I don't know. It's been a long time since I was a kid. I don't know what Smokey the Bear says anymore. Okay, introductions and welcome pages. So this is, we're thinking about the start of a course, hopefully when we're trying to get someone engaged. So the learner's about to start, there's a typo here, a food service course about basic health and safety in the workplace. This is the very first page they've come to. Right now we're saying, welcome to this course about basic health and safety in the workplace. Today you will learn the most common procedures you are required to perform in the workplace in order to keep the environment sanitary. Click the forward arrow to begin. Let's try to do an improved version. Now again, this is a welcome page, so some hints. How can we capture interest? How can we talk about the what's in it for me? How can we do a little something to get their attention rather than just welcome, here's my instructional plan about what I'm going to teach you, click the forward arrow to begin.
A lot of people wanted to remind you that it's only you can prevent forest fires.
Oh, thank you. I did not remember to save me. My side note while you're typing, I recently asked my mother, why did we stop going camping? Like we used to go camping a lot when I grew up in Idaho, and we used to just go camping a lot. Family had a lot of kids. We didn't go to Disneyland or anything. It was camping. And she said, oh, did you think those were camping trips? That was hunting season.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, well, thanks for destroying that little childhood memory. Maybe I have now also blocked what Smokey the Bear says, because that was, you know, such a painful revelation that Dad was just there to hunt. So what do we have?
So some of the comments. This one is the hardest. I've been using this instructional design speak for 7 years on the first page, so getting over it's going to be difficult. Get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, but keep it clean and safe.
Awesome.
Let's see. Think about the food you eat. What are the conditions you'd like it to be prepared in? What can we do to create that environment? Let's see. Here's a couple more. Story scenario where the main character has to keep the environment sanitary, but they need your help. How about a picture of an unsanitary kitchen and the question, would you eat here?
I love that. I love that.
Let's see. No one likes getting food poisoning or eating in a dirty place, right? So that's a good one. More stories starting with a problem. Would you want to eat in a place like this? Showing several errors. Show a a little man slipping on a banana peel, then say, "This could happen to you." No one wants to eat somewhere that's not sanitary. How can you keep this work environment sanitary? Do a test right off the bat, seeing how much they're aware of. The game agency also, one of our friends, the game agency has a game that does something similar to this, where it shows a picture and you get to look at it for a certain amount of time, and then it jumps over to questions about that picture that you can try to guess. So that's something that would run along with a lot of these ideas. Is your workplace safe to eat in? Let's review some environmental sanitary processes. So a lot of the same kind of things.
Yeah.
Oh, one
Okay.
person says, I'd love to see an AR activity with this.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It might be too scarring or shocking. So this is one where I went a little further. Like a lot of the examples that I've showed you have been relatively safe. I went a little bit further in this example. And I hope that it illustrates where you can go if you're allowed to, depending on the tone and the audience and the whatever. But I'm thinking if this is basic intro for food service, then our audience is probably, that 18 to 25 range. And so this is what I had. We've all heard the horror stories of worms in salad bars, Band-Aids in burgers, and special surprises in ball pits. Here at Restaurant X, we know we can prevent it with a little common sense and your help. Welcome to Basic Health and Safety, where you'll learn the cleanliness of our environment is a team sport and one we can win. So again, just maybe a little attention getting, because they probably wouldn't expect that the course was going to talk about worms and salad bars, which really happened to me when I was in high school and we went to Wendy's. I shouldn't say that. We went to a restaurant. Anyway, there was not a worm. It was a caterpillar, actually. Anyway, but we've all heard stories like that. And nobody, that's like everybody's worst nightmare. So you're kind of calling on, hey, don't we kind of all have this in common? Isn't this how you feel about your food? And that's a lot of what you guys were talking about too, getting them to think about their own feelings and their own experience and what they would want. Again, talking to them about them, when unfortunately a lot of times we're just kind of talking about our business and our instructional plan. Okay, here's another one. Instructions. Guys, I wanted to do like 7 on just instructions, because this is and I didn't, because I'm trying to reform and not have too many slides in my webinars. But we could do a million of these, because this is where we missed the boat. Okay, context. The learners received basic instruction about some communication faux pas that get in the way of maintaining good working relationships with coworkers. Now, the instructional designer wants to stop and run them through some scenarios to see if they know how to apply best practices. There's going to be 3 scenarios, each one with a different coworker throughout the course of a fictional day. So that's what we're about to set up. The instructional design speak we're using is, on the following 3 slides, you're going to be presented with 3 scenarios that show how communication can get in the way of good working relationships. Read each scenario, then answer the questions and read the feedback that is shown to you. Surely we can do a better job than that. So let me hear your improved versions.
While people are writing their improved versions, there was a question that came up. What is your opinion, or what are your thoughts on video and audio in place of just text in some of these places?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if there's a way that you don't always have to set something up, but a lot of times we're kind of left with just the writing here to do it. But if you have better methods and means available to you, I know I've worked in environments where the audience doesn't even have a sound card, so it just depends. But if you can, absolutely.
All right. Wow, they are pouring in now.
Yay!
Have a scorecard, level of sickness, how many days in the hospital, or have a coach. How good do you think you are at workplace communication? Let's find out. Let's follow John as he goes through his day. How does his communication get in the way of his relationship? Let's see. You've all had those communications that have taken a wrong turn. Let's put you in the driver's seat and get you back on track. Check out the following scenario.
Those last couple ones, like that one talks about your own experience, but then it also talks about how you're going to engage in the experience that you're going to have, and that you're in the driver's seat, and that you're just that type of verbiage and engagement. Going back to our party invitation example, that's what we need, because people feel very passively forced through this stuff that we're designing. So if we're constantly saying, hey, this is talking to you about you, But then when you're going to engage, we're literally saying, hey, this is about you. You're going to have an experience. You're going to make a decision. You're going to show what you know. That is exactly what we're talking about. Anyway, go ahead. Keep going.
So check out the following scenarios where communication gets in the way of productive working relationships. Check out these interactions from The Office and tell us what you would do differently. I wouldn't introduce the scenario. I'd simply show them a character communicating poorly and ask them how they feel about it, followed by an improved version.
Let me pause there for a minute. Having no instruction at all can sometimes work, depending on how you're setting it up. So just popping them right into a story, that can work. Sometimes we feel too much, like we have to over-explain every little thing that they're about to do. Now, of course, we have to keep in mind how familiar are they with technology? Are these people that have had a lot of experience with e-learning? We can't go too crazy if people aren't super familiar with the format. So you have to balance everything. But I like that someone's thinking along those lines of, why can't I just immerse them in something and then invite them in small ways to start interact, be clear in those invitations, but I don't have to do some big setup per se. I could just immerse them. Go ahead, sorry.
It's time to play a day in the life. Speak with each team member and see how you do.
Yeah, I like that. So you're basically setting that one is a concept of setting it up like it's a game. And then, and you're giving them a self-challenge. How will you do? Oh, I don't know. I always use the example of all of those Facebook quizzes. This is not as common as it used to be, but in the old days, it used to be like, which Twilight character are you? And that type of stuff. I only know about this because apparently every person I know is taking these quizzes and posting their results online. People are so interested in themselves. What does this say about me? How can I score? What does my score mean about me? So anyway, this particular example is building on that, and that's a successful strategy. Go ahead, Andrew.
You're about to encounter 3 coworkers in some challenging situations. Can you navigate through these communication challenges without being summoned to HR?
So again, some of the good stuff we've talked about, but now we're actually introducing a consequence. So I like that because it gives them, we're actually introducing more than just a self-knowledge challenge, but it's more like, oh, I don't want to do poorly and get sent to HR, so now I'm really going to pay attention. I like that.
One last comment on this one is another thing that we are supposed to do as instructional designers is know about our audience and not treat them as though they're stupid. And this is definitely.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's more. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying this is definitely a scenario for that.
Oh yeah. Well, and it goes back to what some people were sharing about the party invitation. Like, do you have to lay out every little thing for me? Like, you know, and sometimes too, if you're reusing the same instructional strategy in the same course, they should know how to use it. If your UI is good enough and intuitive enough, and you've already taken the time to explain it somewhere else, you don't have to go into laborious detail about how something functions. Loved them. Those were good examples. Okay, oh, you know what? Oh no, this is mine. I was like, oh, I did do another one on instructions. Yay, I didn't. Now that you know what's standing in your way, can you make it through the day? A day without straining a relationship, that is. Over the next few minutes, you'll receive visits from 3 coworkers. Each has a problem, and each one is more emotional than the last. Stay cool, apply your skills, and we'll review how you did. I actually like some of your guys' stuff better than that. It was funny though, as I was writing this, I'm like, you'll receive visits from 3 coworkers, kind of like it was, what is it? Everyone Will Help Me. The Ebenezer Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past and all of that stuff. My examples are not working very well today, obviously. I didn't drink my V8 juice when it comes to that. Smokey the Bear, I have no idea. Content writing, okay. The context. The learner is being exposed to content that helps them understand the communication best practice of paraphrasing. The content is in red below. So this is where this isn't even what we've written. This is content that's come to us from a Smee, and we're going to improve upon it without changing the messaging. And if you can get really good at this, you can sneak it past your Smees. You can actually improve it. You know, if they feel like all their messaging is there, they don't necessarily usually care how it's said. So this is what the Smee said. Restating what you've heard another person say is an important part of the communication process known as paraphrasing. It is important that you repeat back what you've heard using your own words so that the other person knows you've heard them and so that you know that you understand the message. You'll notice that important is used in there a lot. I will caution you that even as instructional designers, we overuse the word important, but so I'm hoping to not see that in our improved version. But how would you rewrite this to be more engaging? Even if just the learner just had to read this paragraph, how could you still get the message across but make it more engaging?
While they're working on their responses here, someone does have a question about your opinion of instructions for clicking next button to continue. They say, I don't feel like it's necessary, but I tend to get overruled by subject matter experts.
Yeah. So one of the ways that we try to approach that is at the very start of a course, we build in navigation instructions that goes through each one of those buttons and what they do. And it's funny to me that midway through a course, we're still feeling like we need to prompt them to click the next button, like they don't know what well, they got here. They've clicked it 20 times, they got here. I think the only thing sometimes that does become confusing to the learner is knowing when to click it, not that it needs to be clicked in order to advance. And so if we can be good about that in how we set something up and be clear in our UI or whatever it is, if there's something complicated, I think that's the only thing sometimes. And I know there's people who want to hide the arrow and then show it after the conditions of the page have been met, but that becomes frustrating because it's not a good user experience to lock it down. So where we generally end up is we provide that instruction up front, and then the only other time we start providing specific instruction is if they have to do something a little different on the page than what they're used to. I was going to say something else about this. Oh, please do not do the thing that a lot of us do, which is you get to some page and it's like, oh, click Sophia's book to continue. No, we don't need to do that because you're just changing the rules on the learner about how to advance in the course after you've already established how advancing takes place. So unless there's a specific reason to click Sophia's book, like click Sophia's book to see what she's reading. Oh, okay, I'm going to get to peek at her book. But no, not to advance the screen. So I'll just throw that in there too. All right, what do we have rolling in?
Awesome. Here's some of the responses. Have two people talking, but show the thoughts of the one who is questioning. I'm going to repeat back to make sure I heard correctly. Those kind of things. Here's what a colleague says to you, quote, "You're not sure you understand. Can you paraphrase it back to her?" Another one, how do you know that you really understand what someone said? Try restating their message in your own words and ask if that sums up their point accurately. Can you think of a time that someone has used this technique with you? Let's see, here's another good one.
It's a good example of it being more simple, being learner-centric, and even asking them to reflect, which is nice.
Do you feel heard when someone repeats back to you what you said and get it right? Restating what you're hearing, what someone else says, or paraphrasing is a great way to help someone else know that you understand what they're saying. That one could probably use some rewording, but I think they've got a good idea.
Well, isn't it interesting too when you read something out loud? And I'd like to stop and make that point because we talk about this on our team a lot. Especially if you're doing actual dialogue, please read it out loud. But I like to take the time even to read out loud my slide-to-slide narrative. Reading it out loud can really help because it just sounds one way in your head until you have to read it out loud. So it's a great practice. Go ahead, Andrew.
Clear communication is in the ear of the listener. What is being said is not necessarily what the other person hears. Paraphrasing is an important tool to confirm understanding. Can you pick the best paraphrasing below to ensure that you're understanding the issue?
I really like that. So we're starting by talking about, we're kind of identifying a problem, we're taking a problem solution approach. So here's a common problem that we all have, and here's the tool that solves it. Oh, okay. Well, now I'm a little bit more interested because as an adult, I want to learn about things that are relevant to me. So I think that's a great rewrite along the lines of being better for adult learning.
Here's one I really like. Why do waiters repeat your order? Because they want to ensure they understand and can deliver what you ask for. Yeah. This is paraphrasing.
Yeah, I love that. And then it starts with just hearkening to a common experience that we've all had and a common irritation that we've all had. As a picky eater, I have this happen to me a lot. Like when people come and they don't write it down, I'm like, oh no. like, this is going to be the worst. Like, I know what's going to happen now. And they'll even come back sometimes, hey, can you just, what did you want on the, you know, because they don't write it down. So anyway, I love that. Hearkening to that sets the stage will you read it to me again, Andrew? Is it still there?
Yep. Why do waiters repeat your order? Because they want to ensure they understood and can deliver what you've asked for. This is paraphrasing.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. It harkens to the common experience, and then it sets up interest, and then going into the technicalities of how it's done. But I'm a little bit more interested now because I'm like, yeah, I've had that experience. Great, love it. Mine. Have you ever felt you were crystal clear only to find out later the other person had a completely different understanding of what you said or what you wanted? All that can be avoided by using the best practice of paraphrasing, which is restating in your own words what you heard the other person say. There are two bonuses to this practice. The first is that the other person feels heard. The second is that you can get confirmation you're on the same page. Mine not nearly engaging as some of the ones that you guys had to suggest. I think this might be, oh, we're down to our last two. Feedback. So here's the context. Now, okay, so we didn't talk about this a whole lot on the other page, but even feedback, guys, can be just super boring. And a lot of times the instructional design speak is, you're right, you're wrong. Here's what the real answer was. We're just talking about our instructional plan. We're not talking about them. So context. The learners just completed a knowledge check, demonstrating their understanding of what paraphrasing entails. The knowledge check requires them to select all options that were a successful depiction of paraphrasing. The options to choose from had both formal and technical examples of paraphrasing, as well as casual and informal examples of paraphrasing, to see if the learner knew that both were acceptable. I give you that information because it allows you to do more with your feedback. Because when somebody goes to select, if that's really what we're testing, then that's what we should be giving feedback on. So the instructional design speak is, that's incorrect. The correct answer is both option B and C. Clinical, cold, boring, nothing. But if we were really using this as an opportunity to coach, which feedback should be, what might we say?
All right, some good ones are coming in. Wow, you almost had it. Look at options B and C. These are correct because, etc. Feedback should be a learning experience in itself. That is not correct. The correct choice is X because, so yeah, there's a couple more coming in. You were close. Here's the explanation. So a lot of people want to make sure that the feedback goes beyond of just showing what the correct answer is. I like to use the correct feedback to reiterate the main point or to gently elaborate on it, and the incorrect feedback, depending on how they're incorrect, to explain or steer towards the right answer.
Yeah. Well, and I've even used feedback to help a wrong person understand why they were partially right. So like, this probably isn't the best example, but in some soft skills examples, like how to tell a customer no, or some people, like, for example, people who want to give the firm no, I might say, you're right to want to communicate clearly and to cut this off as soon as possible before it turns into an argument, but there's a better way to do it, you know? So even trying to validate what might be partially right about that answer, or why people commonly think that, and then to redirect and say, but this could be better. So here's an example that I did. Actually, did you know that paraphrasing can be done both formally and informally? It's just as appropriate to say, so what you're saying is, and do I understand that correctly, as to say, so is that right? This gives you the flexibility to paraphrase in a way that feels natural to the conversation. So in this instance, both B and C would be acceptable. Notice, you know, no points for brevity on that one, but it's definitely an illustration of what we're talking about.
There's one that came in that I feel like we need to address. It says, were you listening? If you were, you would have repeated back the right message.
Yeah. There we go. I don't think I've ever laughed this hard in a webinar. I think I need to do more webinars where other people are just like, because I'm loving it. Okay, objectives. Okay, this is our last one.
Well, wait, before we move on, one last thing about feedback. How do you feel about sending them back to that relevant section for the answer and then re-attempting the question?
I think it's really complicated to set up, and I think it's usually better to just provide on the spot. It's easier and more relevant to just give them the targeted coaching. In fact, what I'd rather spend more time doing is in the system, rather than send them back to the content, is have individual feedback for each option that they could have selected. Because if you've crafted those options the way that you should, and you can see another webinar series that I did, what was it called? The 4 C's of, I can't come up with anything today, the 4 C's of scenario writing or something. Anyway, it should be based on a common misunderstanding or a common mistake. And so I think it's more worthwhile to come in and again say, you know what? I know why you were thinking that. It's because your intention is to X, Y, Z, but actually. And to give really targeted feedback for option A, B, C, and D, I think is a more worthwhile way to spend their time than to reroute them back to a page that they're not going to want to review again anyway, would be my opinion. Okay, so my version was, by the end of this course, you'll be baking, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't have told you that. I didn't even give you a chance to do it. Okay, objectives. The learner is starting the course and they just arrived at the objective screen. Now, what we're seeing here is stuff we see every day. At the end of this course, you'll be able to describe how to mass produce cupcakes of uniform size and shape, discuss the appropriate times and methods for frosting cupcakes in a way that won't melt and stay fresh for delivery, and list the top 5 decorative frosting styles requested by customers and how to execute them. Click the forward arrow to begin. Okay, all of our courses start off this way, but if we were talking to the learner about them and we were seeking to engage them and get them excited, what might we say differently? Notice I changed it up here at the end and now we're talking about cupcakes because it's getting on lunchtime. And people,
It is.
People might need a treat.
I can't get cupcakes for lunch.
You're like in a lot of training, you're able to, you know, everyone always wants a little treat and it keeps them awake. But in a webinar, there's no treat to give.
All right. So some of the comments. This is Jody. She needs to make cupcakes correctly. Let's see how that could be done. Another one, use pictures for each point instead of text. So that can be a fun one. Make each bullet a question. How can you measure cupcakes? Oh, how can you ensure cupcakes have a uniform size and shape?
Oh, because we're talking about them. How can you? Yeah, I like that. That's creative.
Want to make cupcakes worthy of the Great British Bake Off? Read on.
Love it.
Who doesn't love cupcakes? By the end of this course, we'll have you baking and icing the most requested cupcakes like a pro. Yes.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one.
Let's see. Okay, now here's a comment. We have Bloom's taxonomy keepers in our team that don't allow flexibility. Ideas, thoughts, advice on that.
Yeah, I love that you asked that
a little while ago about Bloom's.
That's a very real thing. And here's what I'm going to tell you. What we have in this pink box can stay on the screen. We're just going to change our narration. So if you consider what I have on the screen as being the text, then we might say, by the end of this course, you'll be baking cupcakes like a pro. What does that mean? First, they're not going to be oddball sizes and shapes. Secondly, you'll know how to frost each cupcake the Arctic way. No melted frosting for you. And best of all, before we're through, you'll be ready to deliver on the top 5 frosting techniques requested by our customers. Let's get started. But those objectives, the technical objectives, are still on the screen. They're still there. That's what I'd recommend. Okay, so I've got 2 minutes left. Hey, how perfect was my timing, Andrew? So anyway, I just wanted to hear from you guys one more time. What are you going to go do differently now? What did you learn? What can you apply? What are you taking away? How's your course going to be better? And any questions that you have too.
I'm going to be finding ways to make my courses about them. I'm going to try to not be so stuffy. I'm going to focus on the learner and not what I can do for them, but what they can get from the course.
Awesome.
Be less prescriptive, more fun and engaging. Let's see. Yeah, lots of people that are going to go and go focus on the learner. That's great.
That's awesome. If that's what you guys are taking away from this, then mission accomplished. Our time was really well spent today. So thank you so much. If you guys have questions, I think Andrew has some way that you can send in more questions if you have them, right?
Yes,
The measure.
absolutely. In fact, I think you've got one more slide for me, Misty. You guys can send your questions straight to Scott Condy, and he can get the answers to you that you need. Also, if you want to see more of our courses that Misty and team have built, we are happy to do a demo and get you some more ideas on how to do this. We did a webinar just a little bit ago about Bloom's taxonomy with Rich Vass, and he talked a lot about this, about how Bloom's taxonomy has, these important base bits that we focus on a lot, but getting to the core, the really useful part, and I think you guys might like that. You can find that at our blog at blog.elearningbrothers.com. We'll also be posting this recording there at blog.elearningbrothers.com. But for those of you that are here, I mean, you've all registered, so you'll get a copy of it in your email
Andrew, when
later
we
today.
post this blog, can we just put a little line in our instructional design speak where we just say, do you know what Smokey the Bear's key catchphrase is? Watch this webinar to find out.
Learn more below.
Learn more in this webinar.
And we're not going to tell you when it is, so you can watch all 59 minutes. It's going to be great. But for sure, reach out to Scott Condy if you guys have questions about our custom team or really about anything. You can email all of your questions to Scott Condy and he'll get that information out to you. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Misty for your time, and we hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.